Hello, Survival of the Fittest. Welcome to the 4th episode of MK's Mouth. I'm your host, Oh God, Why Does It Hurt? Make It Stop. Also known as Ricky or MK Kilmarnock. Today's topic has been long awaited. We've been talking on the chat for a while about this. And it is the ins and outs of writing a character of the opposite gender, possible difficulties werein, and as a secondary topic, gender roles in SOTF. Without further ado, because there's a lot to talk about, I'd like to get started. I'd like to start off with writing a character of the opposite gender because I felt this was something that needed to be brought up. There are things to be said about it, and I'd like to get out of the way before we talk about something that I think might be a bit meatier. Because on the chat we've said pretty much everything intelligent there is to say about this particular topic. In fact, someone linked a great video describing females in video games and gender roles depicted therein, and something that you can take from that video is that there are inherent differences between male and female characters, and we all know this. And while gender does not necessarily dictate the actions or personality of that character, it certainly influences them to certain degrees. There are internal factors and social factors as highlighted by the video. And the intricacies of that person's personality depend on what social pressures they allow to be exerted on them and which ones they resist. The classic social pressures these days would include girliness or masculinity, and to which extent someone allows themselves to fit that social image or reject it. No one really entirely accepts or rejects this. There are different varying levels of, femininity, masculinity, and that's just one axis of the chart. I mean, this is any good written character in Survival of the Fittest shouldn't be able to be put somewhere on this line. I'm getting off topic here, but remember that one scene in Donnie Darko? For anyone who hasn't watched that movie, watch it now. The dumb bitch teacher, no offense to you, Tree, not all teachers are dumb, but I mean this one is. She draws out this line and is like, now place this character's personality on this one line between fear and love, what dictates their actions. And Donnie correctly points out that you can't take any reasonable character and do that. That is called a one-dimensional character. And here on Survival of the Fittest, I would like to think that we don't have any of those. They are three-dimensional, or two-dimensional at the very least, and a proper three-dimensional character has way too many factors to just inhibit to one line. Getting back on topic, with that being said, because of this, I don't personally think there's a whole lot between writing a male character and a female character. With that said, I want to take the flip side and say there are inherent differences. They're just not enough to be extremely crippling. So if you can write a male character, you should probably be able to write a female character regardless of your gender. On a flip side to that, yes, we're just going back and forth here. There's a well-known saying that goes, write what you know. And if you happen to be one particular gender, that is usually what you know. Guys can identify with guys, girls can identify with girls. That's just how it goes 90% of the time. So, I mean, I can see how it's completely reasonable to say that, guys might be more comfortable writing male characters, girls might be more comfortable writing female characters. I admit I'm probably a bit more comfortable writing males myself, but as of late, on another site, I've been working on writing a female character, and I liked how it came out, and she wasn't even so much a tomboy at all. Writing a straight female character was another hurdle that I jumped. I don't want to rely on bisexuality at all. Which actually brings me to my next few points. For anyone who realizes this is terribly jumpy, yeah, just work with me here. Remember how I said I was going to write everything out to make sure this was linear? Fuck linearity. I can speak from the guy's point of view. It's a little harder for me to speak from the girls. Again, that whole what you relate to type deal. But some of the inherent difficulties that someone might have writing a character of the opposite gender is that they might rely on, not stereotypes, but I can't really remember the word I'm looking for here. They might rely on shortcuts, simplicities, easy mode, if you will. One of the most popular ways to go all easy mode is for a guy to write a female character who is bi or a lesbian. I did this. It's just an easier thing to start out with, I guess. Some could see it as a crutch. I chastise myself for referring to it as that, but it's not. I don't mean to insult anyone by saying that. It's just it's harder to write a character who has interests that completely contradict your own, and when you're doing it in a sense not just to be ironic. Like, I could write an evil character who's a fucking neo-Nazi and, you know, strings people up, and that's just so hilariously off base from me that that's easy. If I were to write a character who, oh god, who was like a complete a homophobe, there we go, that would be something that would be a bit trickier. If I were to try and write a character who was not a comic pastiche of a homophobe, I'm talking like a more realistic one who kind of sort of, you know, kept it under wraps. They, you know, they don't go around screaming burn the gays, but the basics are still there. You know, there's this uncomfortable tension, there's this prejudice, there's, you know, don't come near me, man, I'm straight, you know, that's that sort of thing. That would be tricky for me to write, because that's something I clearly don't agree with, but it's not an over-the-top interpretation of the idea either. And relating to this, that's why it's a little easier for guys to try and, or for anyone to try and write something that's more with their interests, because it just flows easier. So I'm trying to stay away from that. Well, I wrote a villain and I'm not evil. Shut up. I already got that part. The whole good versus evil thing. Oh boy, I really hate this fucking topic so much. Mimi, Ictor, why do you do this to me? Is there really anything else I have left to cover on the writing a character of the opposite gender? I'm sure there is. I'm sure you guys are screaming something at me. I would really like to get the gender roles, but it's... Okay, quick list. It's easier to write what you know. It's still possible to write what you don't know. Writing what you don't know on a subtle level can require exiting your comfort zone, which takes a good deal of writing skill or experience or both to do. Therefore, most people might start off with writing more stereotypical versions of something. Cheerleader girls, goth girls, lesbians, bis. On the other flip side of things, we have geeky, effeminate guys, super hardcore jocks, gay guys, bi guys, all sorts of shit. So there are a few differences, clearly. You can't just gender swap something and call it good. You can't come up with a character and then decide the gender. The gender does influence a certain thing, or influences certain parts of that character, but it's not going to completely define them, and this is an absolute mess. You're going to have to forgive me for this. I hope you guys are realizing what I'm trying to say here, even if I can't make it extremely clear. There are differences, but the differences are not enough to dictate everything. Alright, got it? Good. I was supposed to address the whole, it's easy to fall into certain traps writing characters. I will just point out a couple of these before moving on. Hypersexualization is definitely one of them, for both sides of the spectrum, whether it be writing a complete stud or a complete slut, just because it's easier. Yeah, I guess it's just don't do it. That's one trap to fall into. I mean, if that's what you're going for, and you really want to write out this complex, you got to do a storyline with it. It can't just be the character's a slut and that's it. I mean, you got to be willing to write that, and you have to be willing to write a complex character behind it, because I know we all don't want to admit it, but that skank from high school, I mean, I really don't want to admit this, but she's complex just as much as anyone else. I mean, I know it can seem like sometimes all those idiots from high school are complete fucking simpletons. Being not very popular in high school myself, I totally love this line of thought. But even the school bicycle was, behind all that, there is a mind, there are 3 dimensions. So if you're going to write something like that, you got to be ready. They're just as hard as writing anyone else. In fact, they're harder, because you got to do it right without making the character look like a complete idiot, or not a good character as in, like as a person, but as a character itself. That made no sense. Another thing to note, most of our female players, again, try not to throw knives at me, most of our female players this game have been hypersexualized, as at least one of us puts it. So this is mostly for the guys here. I'm leaving the girls alone on this one. But you want to watch out for that. If you can identify a character solely on the fact that just their sexualness, or that becomes a big part of their playing in a style that is completely unlike Mitsuko, for instance, and by the way, I think Mitsuko's a terrible character too, troll, then you didn't do something good. And this name's been screaming in my head for the entire thing, so before anyone else asks or comments, and if anyone was thinking of Rosa Fiametta during this entire conversation, I thought Rosa was a great character. About the whole sexualization thing, I think that's a good example of how to work it in, and I feel terribly sorry that these days all she's famous for was the fact that she was very promiscuous, and I think there was a lot of complexity behind her, so I'm just going to throw that one out there for Elena. Yeah, it's a damn shame. Even characters that are well done like that can still come off as complete sex boxes. So just, if that's well done, imagine what would happen if you wrote one out to just be a terrible sex pot. Well, even the good ones don't get the recognition they deserve, so you really want to watch out. Okay, done. MK has shot that horse until it was a puddle of blood. He really wants to go to gender roles of SOTF now, which still isn't the easiest topic in the world, but god damn, it's a little easier, And hey, I already did a lead-in from the whole player thing, so, right, gender roles in SOTF. Let's start with the painfully obvious. You got guys, you've got girls. And the population of any game of SOTF is going to be divided between those two, at least officially, because even while we might have transgender characters, there's only 2 options you can put in that gender box. It's male or female. No, computer, you're not going to sleep mode, even though that would help me concentrate. In fact, we're just going to shut off the monitor. I am the kind of person who, as many people who know me will say, they hate categorizing things. I think that our cast of SOTF, in especially V4, I would hope to think V5, I think that we have fleshed out characters so well and differentiated each other and broke the mold to the point where we really shouldn't be lumped into categories. But I mean, as we said, gender does implicate certain things about a character, or again, not dictate, I don't want to use the D word there, but it will influence certain things. And when this comes out in writing, depending on the skill of the writing, sometimes you have trends which may then be perceived as gender roles in the game, thus proper. There are some wonderful parodies of these gender roles, not humorous parodies, but more like classic writing parodies, think of it that way. Pretty sure Catcher in the Rye was a good example of not so much, I mean, parody is probably not the word I'm looking for, nor is allegory, but more of like a sarcastic statement of something, more kind of tongue-in-cheek. I mean, we had some good examples of that. But gender roles in SOTF, I don't want to say they exist, because then I would die a little bit on the inside, but I can definitely see how some people would see that they exist. My thoughts on this would be to try and break ourselves free of these as much as possible, but let's face it, if we're going to write realistic high schoolers, there's going to be a few truths. The common perception, don't hang me for this, but the common perception, especially in our society today, would probably be dominant male, submissive female, and that's, oh God, I really don't want to say that. Oh my God. I hate you. I hate you all for making me do this. Every single one of you. Hate, 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 hate. Alright. I'm just going to fall back on an example, something I know, because I hate doing generalizations. Ivan and Tabby. Yeah. Greg wanted me to mention certain things about gender roles, or maybe Greg didn't and I'm just making this up off the fly. Who the fuck knows? But I think Ivan and Tabby, for illustrative purposes, drew this out pretty well for me. In this instance, we have a guy trying to play the hero, and a girl who, for the most part, seems to be like a damsel in distress. And we've had many, many pairings like that. Can't really think of it. Oh, wait. I got one. Omar Burton, Sierra Manning, even though they never actually ran into each other. If they managed to run into each other, that would have been great. But Omar was trying to do the whole fight for the girl, macho Rambo type deal. And in his mind, the gender roles he was perceiving was that he was supposed to be protecting the girl. Again, dominant male, submissive female, that sort of thing. That has been switched sometimes. So I can feel the glares coming through the camera lens right now. Understandably, this is a very sensitive topic, and this is why I really hate talking about this, because I'm not a sensitive person. And I'm just talking myself in circles at this point. But, back to Ivan and Tabby for a second. The second point I would like to bring up is that these gender roles can be broken, and they can be broken through writing, through character, thoughts, interactions, ideas. In fact, I think it was pretty much the whole point of Greg and my plot line for a while, where Tabby was pretty much convinced she was a damsel in distress, and then that made her feel uncomfortable and bitter, and she really wanted to break out of that. Not bitter, but definitely distressed. Not in the damsel way either, more like frustrated. She really wanted to break free of that. She wanted to help because, as we have learned, girls and guys in SOTF are equally deadly. They are. On average, girls are probably more deadly in SOTF. Some of our scariest players through the versions, for better or for worse, I'm looking at you, Mariavel, they've been female. Shit, even Sniper Wolf is going off in my head right now from Metal Gear Solid 1. Don't you know that 2/3 of all assassins are women? Yeah, I shot you in the lungs, Wolf. Die. So that's something important for us to remember, is that there's only so much that gender can influence on a character. And one of the things that it certainly does not influence is deadliness. There are some themes that go with the traditional superhero and heroine. There are some themes that flip that on its head. And then there's my personal favorite, the ones that sort of ignore that altogether and put everyone on the same level. I think I have a pretty good way of how to close this off. Yeah, I think I have a pretty good way to close this off, so maybe if I do this good enough, you can forgive me for all the rambling, because I just knew this was going to be nothing but senseless rambling and an overall terrible episode. But gender roles in Survival of the Fittest are something that has an existence that can probably not be completely denied. It's there. I don't want to admit it, but it's there. And it's not so much how we follow these gender roles that determines a good character, but how our own writing shapes our character to accept or reject these gender roles, as stated in the whole writing a character of the opposite gender section earlier in this video. It's all about the established roles that are in society and how they transfer to the island, and then whether the characters want to accept them or reject them or make their own set of ideals for which they can follow. So they are a tool to be used in character almost. For us to have the character run through the mind, well, do I want to be the scared girl that everyone expects me to be? Or should I pick up my friend's fallen rifle and shoot someone in the face with it? And when used properly, this can be a really powerful device. You can have someone skyrocket to the forefront of dominance and of prevalence, not to mention relevance. It's a lot of Vinces, isn't it? And relevance in people's minds. That they are a tool to be used, not something to inhibit or limit our writing. Yeah, I think that closed it off pretty good. Yay! I don't get to die now from the terrible video ninjas. Alright, I'm really sorry about the subpar quality of this episode and all the flip-flopping I did. But now that I've said everything I need to say on that one, we're just going to go look for our next topic, shall we? So this is the MK song. We're picking our next goddamn topic. He's gonna go to the topic. He's gonna go to the topic. Role-playing discussion, go to the pinned topics list. Click on MK's mouth. Go to